That's just sports, baby.
Crowd goes wild, strawberry ice bringing fire and style. Reds, Bengals, Bearcats, all in my zone. This is my stage, my mic, my throne. Boom, like a hammer, I'm breaking the game. Strawberry ice, you're gonna know my name. Sports Talk Thunder, hear the podcast roar. Cincy Fine is kicking down the door. Step into the ring where the passion ignites. Talking sports all day and all night. From the field to the court to the rowing stands. Strawberry ice with the world in my hands. Boom, like a hammer, I'm breaking the game. Strawberry ice, you're gonna know my name. Sports Talk Thunder, hear the podcast roar. Cincy's Fine is kicking down the door.
Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to the show. This is Sports with Strawberry Ice. I'm your host, Iceman Jeff Trunapole. And as always, I'm bringing you sports from a West Side point of view right here in the great city of Cincinnati, Ohio. And you know it, I'm always coming to you live from that ice game.
All right, shout out to my sponsors. They are Party Lawn and Landscaping for all your lawn and landscaping needs. You need your grass cut, you need shrubbery trimmed, I don't know, you need a paper patio, you need anything. I mean anything. Landscaping required. Think Party Lawn and Landscaping. Also, shout out to T Properties, quality housing for quality people. Check out the website at www.tpropertiesllc.com for all your rental property management needs and your rental needs. And of course, Meyer Window, Door, and More. I got them in my house. I highly recommend you get them in yours. They're energy efficient, great looking windows, easy to clean. Meyer Window, Door, and More. The website is MeyerCincinnati.com. And also, shout out to my favorite brewery, Moreline Lager House. Get on down there, get you some delicious Moreline beer, some delicious Moreline food. And tell them I sent you. Moreline Lager House.
And as always, shout out to all my sponsors, Moreline Lager House, Party Lawn and Landscaping, Meyer Window, Door, and More, and of course, T Properties. Make sure you check them out. You can call them, especially Party Lawn and Landscaping. Their number is right there. You can see it right there. So give them a call because the grass is going to start growing here soon. So give Johnny a call. Make him busy and make him, tell me you heard about it from Sports with Strawberry Ice. What is up to everybody in the chat? We've got Stranger is back. It's been a while since he's been the very first one. So welcome back, Stranger. I appreciate you being there. Tony Blazin, what's going on, everybody? All right, so I'm going to start the show with a bit of sad news, but we all knew this was going to happen. Trey Hendrickson is definitely not going to be a Bengal anymore. He is, they didn't tag him. The deadline passed, and he's going to move on. Hopefully, he'll move on somewhere in the NFC, or excuse me, the NFC North would be great. But got a little tribute video for him here. Trey, in my opinion, was the best free agent signing the Bengals have ever had in the history of their organization. You put DJ Reader up there too, but the man 2 years in a row, led the NFL in sacks. Did not win Defensive Player of the Year, which was a travesty. Should have done that, especially 2 years ago. But nothing but love. I mean, it didn't work out for here with Trey. I think it's time to move on. And I just think it's better for both parties. Hopefully, the Bengals will spend enough in free agency that the compensatory pick won't even matter. And hopefully, Trey goes on to the NFC and does a great job. But with that being said, we're here to talk NFL draft. We got some Caleb Down news. We got short arms from Ruben Baines, the man who hasn't been on the show. He usually comes on the show about this time this year, but he's always knows anything and everything about the draft. He's from the NFL Draft Network. He is Ian Cummings. What's up, Ian? How you doing, brother?
Doing good. We're kind of recovering from the really busy combine week right now, but it's been fun. It's been a blast. Always a pleasure to come back with you. I know whenever I do come back and talk draft, it means that the event is less than 2 months away, or around 2 months. Yeah, so we're getting there. We're getting close, and a lot of fun, a lot of excitement, a lot of new news as well to get into.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into that. So the news came out of the combine that Caleb Downs had a knee injury. I don't know if this is something new, something he played through. What is the latest information you have on Caleb Downs and his knee injury?
Yes, the one reporting it is Corey Kinnan, who does great work with Daft on Draft, and he was basically saying he heard from scouts at the combine that Caleb Downs was flagged with a partially torn meniscus and then also a potentially degenerative ACL, right? So
Right.
medical checks happen for every single player at the NFL combine. Sometimes they're a little bit quieter until draft day. In this case, we learned about it a little bit quicker. So it's one of those things where I want to preface right off the bat, right? Anything injury related, there's always an element of entropy with it, right? Some guys get flagged for an injury or a potentially degenerative issue, and then they go on to have a really clean bill of health at the NFL level, right?
Right.
Some guys have a spotless medical check, and then they end up getting really bad medical luck at the NFL level. So, there is a modest correlation for some players, right? But there's also a definite level of entropy with it. So, and also teams may vary across the board in terms of passing or failing players at certain positions, right? So, I think that's top 30 visits are going to be even more key, right?
Right.
A team like the Bengals might want to bring Caleb Downs in again for an independent evaluation with their team doctors and see, oh, does he pass the check for us, right? So it's not a referendum. It's not condemning at any stretch of the imagination right now. I think the main element to think about this through is you're working with a really deep safety class in 2026,
Yes,
right? Dylan Thieneman from Oregon, even guys in the second round, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, Lewis Moore from Indiana, Genesis Smith from Arizona. You've got other players too, like AJ Halsey from LSU, Kamari Ramsey from USC. There's a lot of talent, and Thieneman is probably a trade down option in round 1, but then if you want to wait until day 2, there's options there as well. So I think for the Bengals, really the important matter of it is you want to bring in Downs for a second check to see if your independent doctors don't clear him, right? And if he's cleared, fine, he's still an option at 10 overall. But if he's not an option, if it ends up being a little bit more of a red flag than anticipated, you will have options on day 2. For Downs himself, it could lead to a slight slide down the board. We'll see, right?
That's where I was going to go. Does this make it easier for for the Bengals to get him at 10? Because Mel Kiper, 2 weeks ago or last week, had him as the second overall pick.
Yeah.
So does this make him slide down to us? Is that, or does he slide in the draft? Or I'll put it this way: where did you have him going in the draft before this came out, and where do you have him now?
So I already had him as a potential option for the Bengals, right? Because every year you look at the safety position and there's always that positional value argument, right? Like we see guys fall time and time again. With Kyle Hamilton, he was that elite size speed specimen, right? And he went 14th overall to the Ravens. And in this case, you have Caleb Downs, who measured in around 6 foot, a little bit over 200 pounds, and I think under 31-inch arms, which is, I think, less than 25th percentile, right? So you're not dealing with that same level of size, speed, athleticism. And then on top of that, you have the medical check question marks, and then you have, just the general positional value hanging over it too. He's a top 2 player on my board off of the film alone, right? Like if it were me, if I was the general manager and I had a big need at safety, like I would have no reservations taking
like the Bengals do.
Exactly, like the Bengals do. But also there's just so many factors going into it this year. The deep safety class with a lot of potential starting talents in the day 1 and day 2 range, the medical check that's providing some uncertainty, and then just the positional value argument, right? Would it benefit the Bengals more to draft Downs in round 1, or would it benefit them to get a trench player round 1 and then go safety in round 2 or round 3, right? So there's many factors at play. I did have Downs going to the Bengals. I think I mocked him to the Bengals a couple times in the lead up. I do a 7-rounder every month, so I have to go back and double check and kind of track where he's gone. But generally, my window with Downs was I think 7. Washington, the Commanders at 7 was kind of his ceiling for me. And then I think the Bengals were one of the teams in that range where they're usually a pretty good value need match for him. But at the same time, with a safety, it's so difficult to track. You add in all the other elements of uncertainty. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw him fall a little bit into the teens or maybe even the early 20s. But also, he's such a good football player that if a team clears him and they want to take him, like I can see that happening too.
Okay, so another one that the Bengals fans have been interested in is Ruben Bain Jr. And we thought he had short arms. He came out, they were a little shorter than they actually measured through the season. What's your thoughts on him? Does this drop him down? And then we got the Ohio State boys there. We got the linebackers there. How good they did. How much did that move them up and maybe possibly push Baines and Downs closer to us?
Yeah, those Ohio State guys, they blew the roof off of the combine, man. They were
Mhm.
absolutely insane. And I think juxtaposing them with a player like Ruben Bain, it's a lot easier to draft a guy like Sonny Styles or Arvell Reese when you can point to like, oh, okay, they've got almost 33-inch arms and they ran a
Mhm.
4.46 and they've got this and this, right? Yeah, and then on Ruben Bain's side, he didn't test, so you don't have that verifiable data, right, with
Right.
athleticism. And
Right.
for me, the NFL combine, it's always a cross-checking evaluation first. You never want to completely reimagine your evaluation off of the NFL Combine, right?
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
what the NFL Combine does is it gives you these testing results in a controlled environment so you can see all these athletes on a level playing field, right? But the functional in-game athleticism, that's all visible on tape, right? So you can go back to that, and generally you watch enough film, you're not going to be surprised by too many NFL Combine results, right? There will be some that you'll look at and say, oh, I didn't quite see that. That's when you go back to the film, right? But it's cross-checking. It's not discovery. You already know a lot of what you're going to get. So I think with Ruben Bain, we knew he wasn't the most orthodox player, right?
Mhm.
You
Right.
know, he was a highly touted recruit coming out of high school, immediate producer as a true freshman at Miami, right? Had that breakout early in his career and then was remaining competitive. There was the calf injury in his sophomore season that
Right.
limited his efficiency a little bit, but then he came back to 100% in 2025, started off hot, a little bit of a lull midseason, but then came back and dominated the CFP playoffs. And you look at the efficiency numbers, like still, he had one of the highest, I think, true pass rush win rates at 15.5% in college football per True Media this past year. And at 6'2", 263, even though he's got sub 31-inch arms, for me, arm length is always one of those things. Like, you want to be aware of these thresholds,
Mhm.
but there are ways that players can counteract those thresholds, right? Those deficiencies. And I think with
Mhm.
Ruben Bain Jr., a lot of it comes down to the natural leverage profile that he has, right? Pad level wins in the trenches in the NFL, in college, and especially in the NFL. You have that natural pad level where you can get underneath guys and forklift up. That benefits you a lot. And then also, I think Ruben Bain, he's a technician, man. He knows how to use, the one thing that I keep coming back to, right? Football is a game of physics. You need leverage. That's where the pad
Mhm.
level comes in, right?
Right.
But then also activating your hips with rotational torque is such a big weapon, especially for a guy who has shorter arms, right?
Right.
If a guy
Right.
has longer arms, they can reach the contact point sooner and they've got more surface area to go off of and generate more force at contact. But if you can use the rotational torque and the potential energy in your hips effectively, you can counteract that and mitigate that concern. I think you see time and time again on Ruben Bain's film that he's able to do that. He knows how to set up tackles with rush angles and then load and explode through his hips on punches. He's got the finishing flexibility to pry around blocks, and his hips are a little stiff. I think
Mhm.
people you'll hear people call him a little stiff too, and I agree. I think the hip stiffness is definitely there, but I think
Right.
again he compensates with the torso flexibility. I break down my bend and flexibility grade for edge rushers into three components. You got hip flexibility, which is the ability to roll your hips past blocks, right? You have ankle flexion, which is the most popular one. Guys bending at like 25-degree
Just
angle.
for the record, I have no bending ability whatsoever. My
Oh,
hips,
me neither.
all that. I'm I watching. Like I said, that's why I always like watching the circle drill where they just watching them run and bend. I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't know how the hell they do that. I do that, I would break my ankle. Try to bend like that, I'd fall on the ground. I mean, it's unbelievable watching those guys bend. But
it's
it's a lot of
crazy.
fun here. Now we
Yeah,
got a super chat here. Let me get to this
yeah.
here real quick. And this would be the next guy I was talking about is Bain, or excuse me, Woods, Peter Woods. So MB34012 says if Woods, Bain, or Downs are still there at 10, which there might be a chance the way
There's
this is going out. Now we're still
there's
got
a definite
two
chance. Yeah.
months, 2 months to go here. Who are you taking?
Who am I taking? Oh my gosh, that's tough. I think if the medical's clear with Downs, I would probably take Downs. As much as I love Ruben Bain, as much as I think that he could be a good fit, I think, the tricky part with Bain is you have to wonder where you're going to play him with. Obviously, Miles Murphy, they have a decision to make with the fifth-year option coming up, right?
They
Uh,
should pick it up.
yeah.
I'll answer it now. They should pick it up.
I mean, he definitely took a step up this past year,
Yeah.
and I'm really looking forward to seeing how he can keep trending up. And then Shamar Stewart has a ton of talent too, right? Going into year two, really excited to see how he can keep progressing. So you wonder if Bain is a little redundant with those specific skill sets. But I think if you adhere to alignment versatility, on the defensive line. And I know there was the big debate about whether Ruben Bain should be a 3-tech at the NFL level, right? Should we kick him inside?
What do you think? I think he's an outside guy is what I think. But
Yeah, I think he should stay outside predominantly, right? I think
you can put him on the outside, and they could kick Shamar on the inside. Is
exactly
what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and but here's the thing. I think Bain situationally can kick inside, right?
Yeah,
Again, it's not something that I would want him to do often, but I think there are situations, maybe going against like outside zone, where you're able to get upfield a little bit more through gaps, or even as a pass rusher, just kind of mixing up the looks, against different mismatches. Like if you have a guard tandem that's not as strong with their anchors, maybe get Bain inside and he can use that explosive, well-leveraged power element to sledge through. Like there are different ways that you can do it. It's got to be on a mismatch basis. But I agree with you. I think you can kick different guys inside. You can move guys around, but you've got to adhere to that all-encompassing schematic flexibility. I know they've got TJ Slayton, I believe, going, or who's the nose tackle? Is it Tadarius Slayton? Right?
Slayton, yeah, TJ Slayton.
Yeah. So he's back for
BJ
one more
Hill
year.
sometimes, but it's Slayton.
Yeah. So what I'm thinking is like you have an orbit DT and you can just let these guys go to work around them. That could be very fun. So I think there is a way where you can make it fit. But Caleb Downs is just such a good football player. Again, like he's my number 2 overall
I
player.
heard something that he can play basically every position except the line. That's how versatile Caleb Downs is. It's a
little bit of a misnomer, right?
Okay.
Because he played a few reps at boundary corner. I don't have the exact number on hand right now, but it was predominantly safety, right? But split field, single high, he can rove in the box. He can play nickel against tight ends as a big nickel and resist rub routes over the middle of the field. And he can play boundary cornerback a little bit, right? It's again, it's on a situational basis, predominantly from zone, not press man or off man, right? Just kind of managing zone and managing positioning, which is what he already does so well from post safety and boundary safety on the back end, right? So, the skills are translatable. To say he's a complete matchup piece, right? There is a certain limitation to that where I don't think he's a guy who can press up a wide receiver one on the boundary consistently.
If you get Baines or Downs, they're making an impact. And now,
oh yeah, for sure.
Peter Woods here. Now, this has been my dream scenario because he's been quote which I don't know if he didn't test either. That I've heard he's been dropping. Somebody had him mocked in the second round. My dream is to get either Caleb Downs and Bain at 10, and then go get Woods in the second round. Woods isn't dropping that far at the beginning of the second round, is he?
It's a tricky conversation, man. We never truly know what to expect with the NFL draft. I will say this about Peter Woods, though. I think you're looking at a guy who the entire Clemson defense regressed a little bit over this past season. I think Woods was relatively immune to that compared to, say, TJ Parker, right? I think TJ Parker in general, and I think there's a definite organizational element to it. This Clemson Tigers team coming into the season, people were talking about them having national championship aspirations.
Yeah.
And then they come out so flat. Exactly. They come out so flat. So like, I'm not going to blame the players 100% if their buy-in is affected a little bit because of that rough start. Right. But you saw some players affected by it more than others. Right. I think Peter Woods was a guy who generally gave consistent effort. I think his motor waned a little bit at times, but it picked back up toward the end of the season. Avion Terrell is another one who just brought it week in and week out, like not even changing his pace or his urgency. But I think Peter Woods, the main thing that concerned me from the 2025 film, you saw him, there were reports that he beefed up a little bit in the lead up to the season, right? And I didn't see as much hip flexibility that I saw in 2024. In 2024, there were reps where Peter Woods, there was one rep that I still remember, is very striking, against Pittsburgh, where he was aligned at 7-tech. Outside a theoretical tight end and was running the arc at 7-tech at almost 300 pounds. Like, it's insane. I mean, the flashes
that you see. Goosebumps.
Exactly. Like the raw talent is insane. But then you look at him from 1-tech and 2i and 3-tech, and he's using that well-leveraged, compact, explosive element to puncture through gaps and stack and shed and limit displacement at the line. Like, that upside is there for sure. But I think in 2025, he was a lot less consistent with, lateral transitions and fully rolling his hips through those and getting clear of blocks. And, that's one thing that I want to see him improve, because again, we saw at the NFL Combine, measured in under 300 pounds, which I think if you're gleaning more athleticism and flexibility from that, that's a good thing, but also around 31-inch arms too, below average for the DT position, right? So there are some question marks with him. I feel the slide as of late, right? And I can't pretend to know everything. Like I'm not as plugged in with sources, right? I'm more just an evaluator. Like I tell you what I see on the film. I don't hear a ton of stuff, right? I'm not that connected yet, but it feels a little reactionary. Yeah. Hey, I always stick to the evaluations first, because that's stuff that you can point to. But
Exactly.
it feels a little reactionary. He's still a first round prospect for me. We never know what's going to happen, but if teams have certain character question marks, right? Motor, work ethic, things like that could factor in. To this point, I don't see any reason for that for Peter Woods. But again, sometimes we get surprised on draft night. So we'll see. But I think also another element too, this DT class really doesn't have a bona fide top end defensive tackle, right? So that leads me to believe that at some point you got to take Peter Woods if he's this level of talent. Caleb Banks is another very, very compelling physical talent. But again, the consensus is all over the place as to where he's ranked, right? So when there's no bona fide DT1, I'd have to think that at some point someone's going to take Peter Woods because his high-end film is up there with some of the best in the class, right? Obviously a lot less consistent with the flexibility in 2025, but you still have that really, really compelling ceiling in the right situation.
Yeah, but if Caleb, so what did you say? If Caleb Downs, Woods, or Bain is there, which one are you taking?
If Caleb Downs is there, if the medical checks come back clean, then I'm taking Caleb Downs. If they don't come back clean, I'll probably take Ruben Bain.
That's where I'm at. I mean, honestly, I think if it's between the two, I think the Bengals will take Ruben Bain because just reading tea leaves what Duke has said. Now, guys, bring your questions in the comments. I got them starred, so I will start going through them here. If you got draft questions here. All right, so KP from KC wants to know McNeil Warren or Bud Clark. What's your thoughts on those two?
That's a good question, and I think part of it is hinging on the valuation, right? Emmanuel McNeil Warren, you're probably having to draft with your round 2 pick, I would assume. Bud Clark, you might be able to get in round 3 or 4. Probably trending toward round 3 with the pre-draft cycle he's had. He was one of the best safeties at the Senior Bowl. He was showing the ability to press guys up in man, but then also play in zone. And he's a ball hawk. He's shown that he can read and react to routes. And
can he tackle?
I think he had 4 interceptions or something. I think his tackling is a little bit less consistent. That was the one thing that I looked at with run defense. Emmanuel McNeil Warren, his tackling is kind of inconsistent too. It catches you by surprise because he's almost 6'4", right? He's 6'3", 3/8, I think, over 200, 32-inch arms. So you would think he's very, very good tackling, but he can be an ankle biter sometimes, breaking down a little bit too early and not fully wrapping up. So you got to be careful with that. I think they both bring the inconsistencies there. If we're thinking about evaluation, I would probably it's difficult. Bud Clark tested really well. It kind of validated some of the athleticism thoughts that I had on the film, but I'm thinking, oh man, I would slightly lean Bud Clark in round 3 or round 4 to EMW in round 2. But I love McNeil Warren. I think if you take him round 2, that's a very good pick. I would also throw in Lewis Moore from Indiana in round 3 or 4 as another really good player. Big fan of his film, instinctive playmaker again, and is pretty physical in spite of his size. And there's a few others too that really pop out there. So you've got options at safety. I think the valuation and if you want to try and get a corner in round 2 or something, or offensive line help for the future, right? Like that's something you could go for too.
Okay, now we got this is kind of more of a statement, but I'm curious if you know the answer to this because I don't know. Christopher says Bain's arms are not much shorter than Trey Hendrickson's. I don't know offhand how short Trey Hendrickson's arms are. So
I think they were around 32. I want to say I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but I do know Trey Hendrickson was a really unique player mold, where he was taller, but he had below average proportional length, and he's made it work, right? I think they're different builds. I think Bain's profile lends well more to natural leverage, which helps him a lot, right? But also Hendrickson tested really well as an athlete. He does have enough speed to get around the arc and, create angle advantages, which he can then use. And he's pretty flexible for his size too. So, you've got different counteracting measures, right? But again, I think it all comes down to it's not the arm length, right? We gravitate to arm length time and time again. And it's important to know. It's an important thing to take stock of, but it doesn't define your outcome at the NFL level, right? There are ways to counteract it and produce
the small hands of Joe Burrow.
Exactly. Yeah.
So Ruben Baines isn't going to retire. He'll be fine.
He'll be fine. Yeah.
All right. We got a superstar in the chat too. Oh, shout out to Mon. I see your questions. I will get to them, but I got to get to the super chat here first. Super chats take precedent. Again, NB34012. What offensive players are worth taking, and what defensive players need need to be off the board for it to make sense. Basically, Woods, Downs, Bain are gone. Do the Bengals go offense? I think it's kind of what he's saying. What do you think?
It's tricky, right? Because like, if you're drafting offense for the Bengals, you're drafting for the future a little bit more, right? You're drafting for guys who are not going to be there. I know Orlando Brown Jr. is a free agent in 2026, right? And then Ted Karras as well.
Spencer and so is Dalton Reisner. We just signed him. They're
exactly. So I think if all of these guys are gone, worst case scenario. Well, also here's a wrinkle. If all of them are gone, it could mean domino effect that one of the receivers, Jordan Tyson, maybe is on the board, right? If medicals check out there. Obviously, I don't think you already have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I don't think you need to spend a first round pick on another receiver.
Yeah, but it would be kind of fun.
It'll be fun. That is the pure, just like we're just going for entertainment value.
Right.
Here.
That's just pure entertainment. That would be unbelievable to have all three of them on there.
But I think the practical one is Spencer Fano from Utah, because he can play tackle, but he's been projected to guard and center as well. So I think he could be a really good multi-tool for you. He's got the athleticism, the flexibility, the leverage acquisition. And again, he's another one who we can kind of file into this arm length discussion, where he measured in with 32 1/8 arms. And at the same time, though, he counteracts it with his explosiveness, his elite athleticism, the ability to play with really good knee bend and consistent pad level, and then his hip flexibility not only allows him to redirect laterally, and adjust his alignment, but also he can siphon a ton of hand power from that and play bigger than his size. So that's another one where I think you could move him to center if Karras moves on, right, being a veteran, or you could stick him at tackle if you want to. I think he gives a lot of flexibility. And then this one probably won't be as popular, but I'm going to throw it out here because Mike Gesicki is mainly a pass game specialist, right? Doesn't provide a ton of blocking value. Kenyon Sadiq from Oregon, man. If you want to shoot for the stars, this guy ran in the 4.3s at 6'3", 241. Uber explosive athlete who's budding as a route runner and a separator. He can already splice through zones, but you see his STEM IQ on film. He's a really grueling blocker who plays beyond his frame and his size, and he's physical. And the leverage profile helps him there too. But then also just a completely dynamic rack threat where he can explode up open seams, he can churn through contact, and he's got that 3-level threat framework of a wide receiver while also being a really good blocker too. So if you want to shoot for the stars a little bit, it's a little unorthodox, but I firmly believe in the modern NFL, you need to have at least 2 functional tight ends to have a quality offense, right? Because you got to be able to play in 1-2 personnel and kind of disguise looks, right? And keep the defense on their toes. I think Kenyon Sadiq lends well to that, while also giving you an elite physical talent at the position. So that's if all those defensive guys are off the board that we start having this conversation. But I think Spencer Fano and Kenyon Sadiq are probably the 2 top ones.
All right, there you go. Now we got the superstar Mon for the Bengals Pulse podcast here. He said, what about Sonny Styles? He would be our Swiss Army knife. The defense needs his type of athleticism. I agree with everything Mon said, but we drafted 2 linebackers last year. I don't think the Bengals are going to draft a linebacker, but I would if he's there. But what's your thoughts on him? Go ahead.
For sure. I think at this point, you probably have to trade up to 4 to get Sonny Styles.
Yeah.
That's the
he made us spend a lot of money this weekend.
For sure. But I also say, too, like Demetrius Knight, Barrett Carter, judging from what I've seen, and you guys will be more attuned to exactly what the returns were. But judging from what I've seen, I think they left a lot of room for improvement in the rookie seasons, right? You never want to give up on a pick after a rookie year. But if a prospect the caliber of Sonny Styles falls into your lap, it's very difficult to pass up on that, right? If like regardless of what you have in house, Sonny Styles, man, just insane talent. 6'5", 244, 33-inch arms, ran a 4.46 40-yard dash, 43.5-inch vertical, over 11-foot broad jump. His it was like a 7.08 3-cone or something. I think the worst athletic measurement, and even that was in the 70th.
That was still good.
Yeah, it was like 70th percentile, right? So the athleticism, he's checking every single box there. And then you look at the film, and the film is incredible. I mean, he's a guy a former safety, right? So he plays well in coverage. I actually think that's probably the most overinflated part of his game. I don't think he's quite Fred Warner out there with the fluidity, but I do think he's very good in coverage. He's got depth discipline. He can click and close over top route breaks in the intermediate zones, and he can make plays at the catch. in run defense. He can stack and shed blocks. He's really physical playing downhill in the gaps. And then as he showed, I think in 2024 and then a little bit in 2025 too. In 2025, they utilized Arvell Reese-Moore as that designated pass rusher, the blitz threat. But Sonny Styles, when he was being activated that way more often in 2024, he had 6 sacks. He was a really, really efficient pass rushing threat too. And he's got the explosion, the length, and the bend for it. So I think he can be your complete X factor for sure. It's just for the Bengals, if they want to get him at this point, they're probably going to have to trade up to number 4. I don't think there's a world where he falls to all the way to the 10th pick. But if he does fall, I think it throws all the other arguments out the window. This is my top overall player now. And the blue chip player, I think you have to capitalize if he is there.
Oh, yeah, I would run to the board if he's there. But there's, I think, zero chance. Well, I'll put it this way. If the Bengals kill it in free agency, I wouldn't say there's 0% chance of them trading up to get anybody.
Yeah.
But that's why I always say we got to see what happens in free agency. So, which
sure.
is getting here soon. And I'm ready to find out what the hell the Bengals are going to do here. All right, KP from KC. Ooh. Thoughts on Grace Harton?
Grayson, it's Grayson Halton from Oklahoma. Yep. So he's a fun player, man. I like him a lot. He was one of the standouts at the Senior Bowl. He was really good in one-on-ones. You could tell that the athleticism popped. I'll pull up my my grading sheet of him here on my page. But yeah, one of those guys who, if you're, again, we know the Bengals under Al Golden, when he was at Notre Dame, was using a lot of even front defensive looks. And at Cincinnati, it seemed like he tried to loop in a little bit more versatility on the front. You've got TJ Slaton if you want those odd front, but also you want to have the personnel that can rush from even front or at least one gap in penetrating looks. So I think Grayson Halton fits that pretty well. He's actually I'm counting. Hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's my DT7 right now. He's kind of on the round 2, round 3 fringe for me, but he's a player who 6'2.5", 293 pounds. The arm length is a little bit shorter than I had envisioned. I was thinking closer to 32, but I think he measured 31 and change at the NFL Combine. So again, kind of fits the same mold as Peter Woods, is kind of a sawed-off defensive tackle who doesn't have the arm length, but again, compensates with that explosive energy. And you watch Grayson Halton on film, what he lacks in arm length, like he's got a long-limbed, kind of high-cut build, but he's got a really long-limbed lower body. And you can see how much explosive energy he can build up with that, where he for a guy who's under 300, he does a really good job of resetting the contact point in run defense, sledging blockers off the line, and if not making tackles behind the line himself, clearing the way for linebackers to surge downhill too. So I think that part of his game is kind of understated, but he's a really good run defender. And then also as a pass rusher, he's definitely a little bit stiff. And I think he's even stiffer than Woods if we're talking about. I think the hip flexibility isn't all the way there. I think the ankle flexion definitely maxes out after a certain point. You're mainly looking at him as a guy who can win with linear power or quick swims and arm overs, stuff like that, or club rips, things like that, right? So a little bit limited with the middling flexibility, but he's explosive, he's tenacious, he's got pretty good hand usage for his build. And I think at the same time too, you're not getting a trade-off in run defense. He's shown that he can play beyond his size, and at the very least, control solo blockers and clear open paths. So I think he probably plays best alongside a nose tackle, right? But I do think you're getting a guy who has a really good pass rushing floor and is not sacrificing too much in the run defense spectrum. So he's in my top 75, good round 2, round 3 pick. And I think a player who can provide some athleticism, a good kick there in the terms of raw talent, but also has a lot of operational value.
All right, got another question here from the man Mon. I think you touched on this a little bit, but thoughts on LSU's AJ Halsey?
Yeah, he's a fun player. He is in my top 50. He is one of those guys who I think is just going to be a really solid pro. 6 foot, 215, not an elite athlete, right? I think that's one area where some other safeties in this class haven't beat. AJ Halsey's not gonna. We didn't test off the wall, and I think that shows up on film where he doesn't quite have elite burst out of breaks or planning on driving over top routes. Doesn't quite have elite full field range, but again, a guy who's just very instinctive and physical. I mean, it's really fun to see because like one of his best traits on film is reading and reacting to routes and anticipating breaks and hawking in front of passes, right? I think in his last year at Houston, he had 6 interceptions, and it shows like that ball hawking ability, that ability to, it was either 5 or 6, but that ability to, anticipate, play spacing, play positioning, manage 2-on-1s and zone looks, and just hawk underneath passes, right? Something that maybe the Bengals were hoping they would get from Geno Stone. I think they really could get from AJ Halsey, right? If they get him in round 2. So he's a ball hawk, he's a playmaker. But then when you start to gravitate to the ball hawking, you forget, like, he's 215 pounds and he's rocked up. I mean, he comes downhill. He can lay the wood at contact. He can halt momentum for runners solo head on. And he's pretty solid in that phase too. So I like him a lot. Again, I don't think the ceiling is quite as high as other players because he doesn't test off the charts. And you see that on film where he does max out after a certain point. He's not the most explosive. And I don't think he's the most fluid either. I think he's fluid enough for his size, right? I do think there are some aberrations in the hip fluidity when he has to make sharper transitions, right? Or going inside, outside, right? Swiveling his hips. That's where he can experience slight delays as far as that's concerned. But again, instinctive, physical, versatile, where he can play single high or 2 high if you need him to. Probably better in split field looks at the NFL level, right? Where you can get exposed by elite speed threats, but a really high quality, solid player with a really high floor and the instincts, the intelligence that underpins him in both phases.
Awesome. All right. So got one here. Back to Sonny here. MB34021. We'll do can Sonny rush? He has better measurables than Reese.
Yeah, I think he can rush the passer for sure. He's shown in spurts. Here's the thing. I will say Arvell Reese, even though Reese measures with slightly shorter arms and not quite as heavy, I think Arvell Reese's power element is more consistent, right? We saw him this past season. There were reps where he would, rush in and attack inside the torso and just plow tackles back 5 to 10 yards into the pocket, right? Like that power element with Arvell Reese is extremely compelling, right? Sonny Styles has the build to siphon that power. And I think you see that stacking and shedding ability in run defense where that knockback power, that point of contact force really comes into play. But in the pass rushing phase, I don't think Sonny Styles is quite as consistent at channeling that power, right? I think he's more of a guy who likes to manipulate angles and bend around blocks, and he's got that ability. There's some really good flashes of, using double swipes and cross chops, well rushing around the apex, using that bend and ankle flexion and burst. He's got that legit finesse and kind of nuance to his game. But I think Arvell Reese is definitely proven a little bit more that he's got that, in the NFL, you need that raw power element. You need to be able to reset the contact point and drive blockers back, because at the very least, you're compressing the pocket and making it hard for the QB to step up, right? Or creating opportunities for teammates. I think Arvell Reese, particularly in 2025, one of his calling cards was being able to reset the contact point, play a lot bigger than even his size would suggest, right? He's titanium plated with the way he can just, reset at contact and just win the play strength battle. Sonny Styles has the build for it, but I think Arvell Reese is a little bit more proven as far as, fully weaponizing and working that power element, right? So I'd say Sonny Styles can rush the passer for sure. But also, if we're asking about, because I know the conversation with Arvell Reese has been, is he going to be a full-time edge rusher, right?
Yeah.
Or
that brings up this next question. How come Reese is considered an edge and Styles is an on-the-ball backer? Go ahead now.
Yeah, that's a great pivot, actually. That's perfect, because I was about to bring that up. I think the reason that's more of a conversation is because Sonny Styles is so valuable in his off-ball role. I mean, this is the guy who was the green dot for the Ohio State defense. He was helping get guys in position. He was the leader. He was the mental. You can tell the mental acuity is there. Arvell Reese, I think, for his experience level, is pretty smart. Like, he can isolate, his one-on-one assignment. He can stack and shed and play disciplined against gap looks. But Sonny Styles, man, is just, he's so cerebral as a thinker. I don't think you can eliminate that from his game. I don't think you can say, here, just rush one-on-one every time. Right? And obviously that's not what you ask edge rushers to
turn
do.
your brain off. He wouldn't.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, if you have an opportunity to get an off-ball linebacker like this, who's so rangy, and physical and well-versed in coverage, and then can command the defense as well and serve as that fusing presence at the second level, it's really on the one hand, he's got the traits to rush the pass, and I would want to weaponize him as a designed rusher too in certain situations. Like, I don't think you should eliminate that from part of his game. But the reason we're not talking about him as a full-time edge convert, well, he has the tools for it, is that he's so valuable as that second level presence who can just command the defense, play instinctive and intelligent football, and be that true Mike or Will linebacker that not every defense has at that elite level, right? Arvell Reese, we talk about him as an edge convert because he was playing more of that attacking Sam backer role, where I think what he was utilized for is a little bit more translatable one-on-one to just, rushing the passer, setting the edge, being weaponized on stunts, right? Working across alignments too. So I think it comes from the usage profile at the collegiate level, but also kind of what they showed. Because I think you look at the processing too, there were times more often than Sonny where Arvell Reese gets tied up by misdirections a little bit working from depth, right? I think Sonny Styles is a lot more disciplined, a lot more proficient at kind of working through congestion, right? Staying disciplined to his gap and tracking runners through congested and crowded looks, right? So I think that factors into it too, right? It's the usage profile, and also it's isolating the traits that make them who they are, and isolating the traits that give them their best. And I think Sonny Styles, the instincts, the football intelligence, the ability to be that fusing, that meshing element, right? You can't take that away. You can't turn that off.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Chuck here's got a question about Trey. He says, since Trey is a free agent, would Bengals get a player back from the other team? No, that's not the way it works. You get a compensatory pick, which it could be I think it depends on how much.
It depends on how much money he gets paid, right? So I think here's the thing, it cancels out bilaterally, right? So let's say Trey Hendrickson gets a massive deal, right? It goes from a 3rd round pick to 7th round pick. If he gets, like, let's say he gets near market resetting capital for like a 2-year deal or something, right? The Bengals could get a 3rd round pick if they don't spend that kind of money on a player. If they do, there's a chance that they cancel it out, right? So that's why it's a competitive pick.
Does it take contract for contract, or if the Bengals go sign 3 guys and it equals what Trey's contract was, does that cancel out the pick, or is it just one big contract?
I need to look that up. I don't actually know. That's one.
Sure. I don't know either. I was just like, I don't really know. I know we get a compensatory pick, and
I was thinking it's 1-to-1, contract for contract.
I don't know.
I could be wrong though, so I got to look.
I know if we spend so much money in free agency, then we would lose that compensatory pick. So we'll have to look that up. Maybe I can find out the next one. All right, Michael here says, if Mansour Delaney is available at 10, do you take him?
That's a tricky one, man. Because I remember we were talking about the defensive players, like if Bain and Downs and Woods are there, I was gonna add Mansour Delaney into that discussion almost, right? But I wasn't sure because I know Cincinnati, they've got DJ Turner, who's going to be a free agent in 2026, but you wonder if he's going to get extended because, correct me if I'm wrong, he played pretty well this past year, played very well. So I think, he's a guy who could be a future piece. Dax Hill, I think, is also a free agent in 2026, if I'm not mistaken.
Who's that again? Sorry.
Daxton Hill.
Dax Hill, yes.
Okay. So I think, not having a ton of long-term pieces at corner, you could absolutely.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, you could. So you could pick Mansour Delaney. I think the appeal with him is that he can play nickel or boundary. I think he's a guy who's got the football intelligence for it. And going back to Virginia Tech, his film with the Hokies, I mean, there were certain games where he would rotate back to safety too. So like right away, this guy's instinctive. He's very intelligent. He knows what depth to play with. He's really good at, reacting quickly and recognizing play schemes and, even working one-on-one against routes. I think, the versatility to play press man, off man, or zone, that's all in his toolbox. Definitely one of the more multifaceted corner in the class where, he's got that mirror motor and press man. He's got the reactive athleticism and the quickness to match and redirect, but then also an off man, he can orient and stay square to his assignments and then plant and drive with efficiency. And then in zone too, I think is really good managing 2-on-1s, staying disciplined. Again, always aware of his assignment within the moving parts. And then he's a playmaker at the catch point. His forcing completion percentage, I think, was well over 10%. And I think per True Media, I think he fielded a target once every 23 coverage snaps, something crazy like that. Just insane, not even a catch. Like he wasn't targeted barely, like 3 or 4 times a game. So it's like, this is a guy who was as locked down as you can be at the collegiate level in 2025. I think the argument for him at 10 the one thing that I would say, I don't think he's a quantifiably elite athlete at his size, right? He didn't test the NFL combine, but were he to test, I'd envision probably a high 4.4, which isn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. I think you're still working with more than enough functional athleticism, right? But the key is he's a really high 4 player. I think he's a disruptor right out of the gate, and he's very sound in support too. I think his missed tackle percentage was something like 4%. So very solid player. To answer the question, I would consider him at 10 for sure. If Downs is there and the medical check's clear, I'd probably still take Downs. And also factoring in, this cornerback class is incredibly deep as well, right? A ton of options on day 2.
And that's the thing for me. It's like if people are going to freak out, well, I don't know if everyone's going to freak out, but if we take Baines or Woods and they don't take Downs, it's not the end of the world because they can get a very good safety in the second round too. Maybe not as good as Caleb Downs, but a very good one too. That could be an impact player as well. Am I correct in that statement?
No, I think you are correct for sure. I think I would say the one position that you're probably apprehensive about passing on is defensive tackle, just because like if you need a disruptive 3 tech, there aren't a ton of those in this class.
Right.
Grayson Halton, who we mentioned earlier, is definitely one in the day 2 range, but the disruptive 3 techs, they trickle out a little bit sooner than the other positions. So I think if you're the Bengals, you can feel confident knowing that there are going to be options later on. So it might just come down to who's the best player on the board within these selected positions in round 1.
Now I'll go back to here, Chuck. So he says, so why didn't we tag Trey and get the same thing back? That's not the way it works. we tag Trey that they have to pay him the top 3, I think it is, as far as his defensive position goes, or top. And they have to pay him that. If he signs it, they're locked in to pay that. And the only way they would get out of that is to work out a contract with him or try to figure out somebody who wants to. Well, the Bengals tag him and they trade him to that team, which then they have to agree to pay the franchise tag and then or rip it up and get a whole new deal with him. So it's not as easy just tagging him in, and somebody's got to give us something back for him. It'd be great if it worked that way, but it doesn't work that way. Okay, my boy Divine Thoughts. What's up, brother? He says we need to go after Bud Clark. We need that center field safety. I know you mentioned him earlier there. Where do you have Bud Clark? If you said it earlier, you are full of information, and I absolutely love it, but my brain doesn't always connect everything you're saying. Where did you have Bud Clark going?
Yeah, so right now he is kind of on the day 2, day 3 fringe for me. But I'm a big fan. And honestly, like he could rise into my top 100 before the cycle's all said and done. He's a really good player, a little bit older for a rookie, but again, a player who was productive, was a multi-year starter, and looking at the measurables, I think I gotta look up his measurables, but at the Senior Bowl, I think he measured in with around 32-inch arms. I'm looking up his combine measurements now. I don't have it off the top of my head. 6'1", 188. The combine measurements was 31 1/2-inch arms. I think he was closer to 32 at the Senior Bowl, and you saw a lot of players measured in with a little bit shorter arms at the combine than the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl. So, I feel like there's a little bit of variance there, but I digress. He's long, he's lean, he's explosive too. I think he has all the testing athleticism that you want. And then you watch the film too. Like the comment said, he can play single high. I think he's another guy who's pretty versatile with his roles as far as single high, 2 high. And then at the Senior Bowl, I think he really proved that he can go up against guys in man coverage on an island, not consistently, right? You don't want him doing it every single down, but against maybe big slot receivers. He's a guy who can get in there and disrupt and jam with his length and then contend at the catch point too. So more of a day 2, day 3 fringe guy for me, but trending toward being in my top 100 and being a day 2 rated player for me, and a really good player. Again, instinctive, heady, pretty fluid for his size too, and then has that ball hawking ability that can really turn the tide for a defense. So good player who's rising on my board in a pretty stacked safety class. Before I move on to another question though, because I know we're talking about center field safeties.
Yeah, go ahead.
A few other guys that I think that fit that mold too. One in particular, Genesis Smith from Arizona. Right,
I love the name. I might draft just for the name, Genesis.
Exactly. I know it's so good, right? Now with Genesis Smith, with him and Bud Clark, really, I think you're gonna have a little bit of inconsistency as a tackler, right, and run support. I think Bud Clark can definitely improve at engaging blocks coming downhill a little bit. I think Genesis Smith is even worse in run support. I think for him, there's a lot to work on with
Okay.
angles and tackling. Probably one of, I'm not trying to rag on him because I like him a lot as a prospect, but one of the worst safeties in the class as far as tackling and consistency and
Then
support. So
no. I want a safety that can tackle.
I know
You got to be able to tackle.
It's not ideal. It's not ideal. But here's the thing:
we've had enough guys that can't tackle.
for sure, and it's one of those things too. It can be a habit that's very tough to break at the NFL level, right? So I think that it's a legitimate red flag for Genesis Smith, but it's something that at the NFL Combine he was asked about it, and he's at least self-aware of it. He's working on it, so we'll see if you can improve that. But if you can, like, here's the thing: if you're willing to take a chance on that, his center fielder ability is the best in the class. I legitimately think that. Like, he's explosive, he's rangy. At 6'2", he's really fluid, and he's so instinctive at managing positioning. Right, very quick to react to route breaks. He can recognize 2-on-1s, and he can process overlapping route concepts and click and close and make plays at the catch points. So it's a very, very stark dichotomy of, like, hey, he's an elite coverage defender with true single high ability, center fielder that we haven't seen in a long time. But also, you really got to work from the ground up as a support defender, right? He's rangy, but he has a lot to clean up. If you can work past that, Genesis Smith has a ton of upside. If you're trying to get a little bit better balance, I think Bud Clark provides the better balance. So it's all about what you want.
Yeah, Divine says Bud also needs to add another 10 pounds or so. Bud can't tackle Genesis. Man, his name means business decisions.
Yep. And that's the key, man. You can't have safeties making business decisions. They gotta be in there.
Hits. I want some dogs. Hit somebody. What
I will say with Genesis Smith, though, there were flashes of growth down the stretch last year. The game against Baylor, which I think was week 9 or 10 or 11, it was closer to the end of the year. Genesis Smith had 15 tackles that game and a forced fumble, and he was showing a little bit more discipline with angles, going downhill and kind of recalibrating his angles based on runner modulations where they were tracking. And then the fumble play was a really good one where he squared up, he was recalibrating, and then he managed to peanut punch, get his fist in there and dislodge the ball. So there were flashes of growth. We got to see more consistency. But again, if you want to swing for the fences with the upside, Genesis provides that. But Bud Clark, another really good option.
I can't remember. Did you talk about Lorenzo Styles?
Lorenzo Styles, I will be honest, I have not watched in depth. To my knowledge, was more of a rotational / special teams guy at Ohio State. So ran a 4.27, or it was either 4.26 or 4.27. The speed is out of this world, right? But I need to watch him more in depth to get to give an in-depth evaluation. But from what I've seen, what I've seen just from a contextual standpoint, probably looking at a late round pick to PFA with special teams utility early on.
Crip has put this up twice, so I saw it. Crip, you just gotta give me a second to answer it. Jeffro, if you're around 30, would you sign with the Bengals as a free agent? Me, yes. There you go. Answered it. Okay, Clark. KP says Clark gets turnovers that we need, and Divine Thoughts saying he's a Tyson Anderson. I guess that's who you're. Oh, there you go, Lorenzo. That's what I meant.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. Like, again, I haven't watched him in depth. Part of the reason for that is he wasn't a consistent contributor on the defense. Like, again, more of a special teamer, rotational guy. So that's probably what you're working with early on. I'd say late round PFA.
Now I got a guy that I like, and the reason I've got on this guy is because of Dale Altman and a guy who commented my chat a lot, Ken. But Landon Robinson, tackle out of the Navy. He didn't get invited to the combine, which I thought was a shame. But I'm sold on him. I saw an interview with him on Bengals and Brews, and he's a military guy, Navy guy. I'm all for that, and guys being able to pursue their dream, even if they did say they were going to work for the country. But what's your thoughts on Landon Robinson?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up because I know we were talking about, the defensive tackle class earlier and how it kind of trickles off a little bit down the stretch, especially with like the disruptive 3-techs. Now, Landon Robinson is a player. He played some 3-tech. He played some 1-tech and 0-tech, and even going as far out as 5-tech in Navy. They used him all across the front, but more often closer to the fulcrum within 0 and 3. But he's actually my 57th overall player. So I'm glad you brought him up because I'm a big fan of him. I'm probably higher on him than most.
So 57. So that's like day 2, day 3.
Day 2. Yep. So he'll probably be in my top 100 by year's end. A player who Again, I don't think we need the NFL Combine to get a true verification because, one, the athleticism shows up on film, and
Right.
two, he was documented on Feldman's Freaks in the offseason as
Yes.
having like I
Right.
think a max speed of over 23 miles per hour and a
That's
33-inch
crazy.
vertical, which, yeah, this dude is 5'11" with almost 300 pounds of compact mass. At the Shrine Bowl, I believe he measured in 5'11", 1/4, 291 with 31 and 5/8 inch arms. So longer arms than Ruben Bain, if we're making the comparisons there. But again, Landon Robinson, he's explosive. I really like, for his size, being a guy who's under 300 pounds. He sizes up really well for that build where he's resetting the contact point. The natural leverage profile is almost infallible. It's so hard for offensive linemen to get under this guy because he's always the low man, right? Short kings
Yeah.
represent. He's out here just like, occluding the B gap and just really doing a good job. And he's shown that he can use the knee drop technique to resist and split through combo blocks and double teams. But then also as a pass rusher, you do have some nuance there where he can win with clubs and swims. I think he's still improving his counter consistency, being a guy who's a little bit sawed off with shorter arms. If you don't generate disruption on your first move, it can be a little bit harder because longer linemen can get you tied up after that, right? If you don't land cleanly. So I think cleaning up those first moves, the precision, and then also improving his counter arsenal are the areas of improvement because he's not the most flexible guy either. I think he has above average flexibility, but that's where it stops. I didn't give him a trait bonus for it. You have to be good or better on my scale to get a trait bonus for a certain trait. So
Right.
he's not quite there. But again, explosive, really good compact power element, but also very good play strength for his size. And then also the leverage profile just does so many good things for him. And he's got the motor, like you said, he's got the work ethic, the leadership ability. So I don't think you're going to have to ever worry about him as a locker room guy.
No.
And then at the same time, too, he can play a bunch of different roles for his size. My player comp for him, he needs to add a little bit more mass to match up with this 100%. But I think about Puna Ford over with the Los Angeles Rams, what he can do, between Braden Fisk and Kobe Turner, a guy who can play one tech if you need him to, but also split out to 2Y and 3 tech and still provide some disruption as well. So motor guy.
If the Bengals take him in the second round, which they're in the 40s, I don't know the exact number, would that be a reach? Would that be too high? Or
on my board, it would be. Here's the thing: on my board, it would be pretty close, maybe a tiny reach, but at the same time, I anticipate him being more of a round 3, round 4 pick. I'm cognizant of the fact that I'm probably a little bit higher on him than most.
We give him round 3. All right.
Yeah, being a size outlier who wasn't invited to the combine, I think there's a good chance that he slips a little bit. But if you can get him in round 3 or round 4, I would say that's a steal.
All right. A couple more thoughts here. We're going to get you out of here. Excuse me. I think you talked about this already, but ask about Malachi Lawrence. I love the dude as a pass rusher, burst and great hands and pass rush plans. So what's your thoughts on Malachi Lawrence? Did that already? You ever talk about that one?
No, I didn't talk about Malachi Lawrence. So this is a good one because I'm actually a really big fan of him. Let me check where I have him on my board. I got to sort by edge. He's in my top 75. He is one of those guys who has at his highest, he was in my top 64, I believe. I've kind of gone back and forth of where exactly to settle in, but he's safely in my top 100 and a player who, again, I think the NFL Combine proved it. He ran in the 4.5s. I think he had an over 40-inch vertical, so the athleticism is definitely there with him. And then in 2025, I think he had a true pass rush percentile pressure percentage of over 13%. So you're looking at a guy who, again, like the comment says, provides that really consistent pass rush element to his game, and it's all about the complete profile, right? Like he's 6'4", I think he's 250, over 33-inch arms, so he's got a pretty good size profile, right? And he's shown that he can channel power with his explosiveness, his compact mass and length, but also I think the pass rush bag. I mean, he's shown that he can set up rushers or set up tackles with his initial attack angles, get them to overset or underset, and then capitalize with either Euro rips or club rips or cross chops, things like that. He's got all those moves in his arsenal. I think to fully size up at the NFL level, I think he can be a little bit more consistent, fully aligning on his power rushes. I think there are times where he overextends a little bit too far before fully engaging his hips into those rushes. So you want him to keep improving that. Also, in run defense, he can get moved pretty easily still. I think he can improve his lower body strength a little bit more because I think his average depth of tackle on tackles and run defense was around 3.5, 3.6 yards, right? So as an edge setter, He has work to do to become a little bit more sturdy, but as a pass rushing threat, you're working with a guy who's super explosive, supercharged, quick in tight spaces, and then he's got the length and the compact mass to siphon power from that and stack counters off of that initial power exertion. So the pass rush bag is deep. The production is very promising, and I do think you have enough of a foundation to build a run defense for. So top 75 player for me. I got to do final checks, but I think there's a chance he could end up in my top 64 when it's all said and done.
Awesome. On that note, I gotta get out of here. The chat is blowing up, so Ian, we're gonna have you back on again here because you got a ton of information, and I love it because you sound like a computer, just like and you just spit it out, and it's a ton of information. It's awesome, and I appreciate it. But do me a favor, plug some stuff. Tell everybody where they can find all your work at.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having me on. It's always a blast catching up and talking draft. You can find my work. You can follow me on Twitter at IC_draft. Any draft questions that you have, just feel free to tag me and I'll be responsive. As far as work that we've got coming down the pipeline, Pro Football and Sports Network, PFSN, the mock draft simulator, that's a tool that I help oversee. I'm adding more and more scouting reports to it every day. The goal is by the end of March, we're going to have scouting reports for every single draftable player, like within the top 300. So you can have a more informed process and explore those outcomes. And then we've also got a really cool new tool called the NFL Draft HQ at PFSN, where I have my grading scale, right? And this offseason, for the first time, I experimented with the sub-trait grading scale. So like you have a trait like processing for linebackers. We go even deeper, reaction quickness, pre-snap processing, post-snap, so the sub-trait framework, it's been an experiment. It's been a lot of fun to work with, but if you want to see all my grades, you can go to the HQ. They are there and they can help you further contextualize player fits, potential values, things like that, all geared toward trying to be the most informative as far as the process goes. So still a lot of work to go, but we're having fun doing it.
Yeah, you're one of the most informed guys I know. That's why I love having you on here. I appreciate all your hard work. And like I said, I might reach out to you next week again. You'll be around. We'll have to get you back
anytime. I'll make time. You got it.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Ian. Take it easy. See ya.
Thank you, Ice. See ya.
Yep. See ya. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I know you guys have more questions in there. Save them for next week. I'll try to get Ian back on again, and we can do this all over again. Ian has a great wealth of knowledge of the draft. I mean, like I said, he literally just spits it out. It's like a freaking computer, dude.
All right, shout out to my sponsors. They are Priority Lawn and Landscaping for all your lawn and landscaping needs. You need your grass cut, you need shrubbery trimmed, I don't know, you need a paper patio, you need anything. I mean, anything. Landscaping required. Think Priority Lawn and Landscaping. Also, shout out to T Properties, quality housing for quality people. Check out the website at www.tpropertiesllc.com for all your rental property management needs and your rental needs. And of course, Meyer Window, Door, and more. I got it in my house. I highly recommend you get them in yours. They're energy efficient, great looking windows, easy to clean. Meyer Window, Door, and more. The website is MeyerCincinnati.com. And also, shout out to my favorite brewery, Moorline Lager House. Get on down there, get you some delicious Moorline beer, some delicious Moorline food. And tell them I sent you. Moorline Lager House.
That's right. As always, shout out to all my great sponsors, Moorline Lager House, Priority Lawn and Landscaping, T Properties, and of course, Meyer Window, Door, and more. Make sure you guys go check them out. Thanks again for watching. As always, I've been live streaming YouTube, Facebook, X, Twitch, Instagram. You can follow me on all of those, along with Threads and TikTok, and also check out my Substack. I've been writing some articles on there from time to time, so make sure you check it out. Also, if you want to re-listen to any of this stuff, I have a podcast. It's just an audio version only. It's on anywhere you get your podcasts, on Beanpod, Apple iTunes, Spotify, Google, Stitcher Play. Like I said, pretty much wherever you get your podcast. Do me a favor. Listen to it. Rate it, like it, review it, leave a 5-star review and a comment so more Cincinnati fans can find my podcast. It just helps the algorithm out. Just like hitting the likes on here. Share the show out. If you're on Twitter, share it out. And on Facebook, share it out. If it's on Instagram, share it everywhere. I appreciate it. All your guys' help. You guys are awesome. Other than that, you guys remember one thing and one thing only. Houday for life. Let me throw it up. That's your sports, baby. See ya!
Another great show. You guys still here? The show's over. You can come back tomorrow. I'm out of here. See ya.